June 20th, 1975. The movie Jaws was released in theaters. It changed movies and swimming for the next 50 years. Dun, 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 dun. Hi, welcome back to another episode of Direct Edition, Season 2. Here we are, we made it. Season 2 is underway. It's the first episode back. And thank you for sticking with me, and thank you for letting me enjoy a nice 3 weeks off. I am re-energized, I am revitalized, and I am ready to rumble. And today's going to be an episode that I have never tried an episode of anything like this before. I've never tried to record a video or audio and kind of like an analysis comparison. And we're gonna get started on that in just a moment, but I wanna make sure that I say hello to everybody, and once again, thank you for sticking around for the premiere of Season 2. I just got back I just had like a very long 2 weeks, which is one of the reasons why I took this break. I attended Heroes Con in North Carolina, the great legendary Shelton Drum founded Pure Comic Con, and it was a blast. I'll probably talk about that next week on another episode. Then I came home on Monday, whatever day that was, and 4 days later I I did my own Comic-Con, SummerCon here in Washington. I did a 3-day double-sized booth, so it was a 10 by 20, and it was the largest Comic-Con footprint I've ever had. It was also the most successful weekend of sales that I've ever had, and it was just a great 2 weeks of meeting people that I have talked to for a while online, but I've never met, and seeing people that I've met before, and it was just a fantastic, positive experience all around. I want to say thanks to everybody that said hello. I want to say thanks to my buddy John, who worked for me at SummerCon, and I want to say thank you also, big shout out to Andrew P., who is the producer of this podcast. We released our first self-published zine, and it's The Many Faces of Jack Kirby. A lot of you have already bought a copy from me. You already have it in your hands, and I want to say thank you to that. I want to say thank you to anybody that is interested in buying a copy. A portion of the proceeds is going to go to the Jack Kirby Museum and Research Center. If you are interested in buying a copy, they are $30. You can hit me up on my website, westcoastdavengers.com, and just shoot me a message, or you can hit me up on Instagram, and we will take care of it there. I'm so proud of it. I'm so happy. And it seems that everybody that's gotten one is really enjoying it. So it's really all I could ask for, and not something I ever planned on doing. I never set out to be like, I'm going to put out a zine. And now that we did, me and Andrew, I want to do more. And so that's just kind of little blurb, little blab of what's been going on. Let's just jump into this because I think this is going to be a long episode. There is going to be spoilers ahead. So if the 3 movies that I'm going to be talking about, Jaws, Nope, and Godzilla -1, if you haven't seen them, you might not want to listen to this, but honestly, at least Jaws, if you haven't seen that, you're on almost a 50-year... you've avoided spoilers for 50 years, half a century. Because next year will be 50 years of Jaws. It came out in 1975. And it is my single favorite movie of all time. And I think it is one of those rare, absolutely perfect movies. There's no flaws. It is the reason. Well, we'll get into it. But I want to just talk about the overall reason why I'm doing this. So it's my favorite film of all time. It's probably the most inspirational film outside of, maybe the Star Wars trilogy and the Lord of the Rings trilogy for me. I saw it when I was a kid. I was never afraid of sharks. I was always fascinated by sharks. I think Jaws is the reason for that. I can't pinpoint it. My parents might be able to, but I always enjoyed buying, would ask my parents to buy me these hardcover shark books, it's just like to learn about them. I didn't even read them for the most part when I was a kid. I just looked at these pictures of these beautiful creatures, and I was always fascinated by them. And then Nope, which is Jordan Peele's 3rd film, came out in 2022. I left that movie theater and I said to my friend who I saw it with, I said, that's his Jaws. Like, it was so apparent to me, not even halfway through the film, probably half hour into the film. And there's a lot of comparisons in the characters, the plots, the plot devices. There's a lot. The resolve of the movie is very much a love letter to Jaws. And then cut to last year, Godzilla Minus One gets released in the States. Maybe 25 minutes into that movie, I was like, oh man, this is another one of those movies that's just a love letter to Jaws. And so I want to talk about the three, and I want to throw out some reasons for why I say that, and just kind of give you my not even theory, just my opinion on how affected both Jordan Peele and Takashi Yamazaki were affected by Jaws, because it's written all over their films. And a lot of this was inspired. I listened to Rob Liefeld's podcast, Robservations, and he did 2 episodes on the Swipe File, which he talks about. Like, he pointed out that it's influences. It's when you're affected so deeply by some piece of art that you saw, you listened to, that you whatever, that when you go to create your thing, you pay tribute to that by homaging an actual scene, a shot, a pose. You know, there's a lot of people, I can go into an episode of bands that will use Bob Dylan lyrics inside their songs. It's not like they're covering the song, but they'll use, the Guns N' Roses did it. Cold War Kids did it. Like, there's so many people that will use a lyric that Bob Dylan wrote inside of their song. And it's like, it fits there. Plus it's like, oh, I'm paying tribute to the greatest songwriter of all time. In that inspiration from Rob's podcast, I was thinking about how Jaws is one of those movies where its influence in general is everywhere. But I'm not going to go into things like shitty shark movies that always wanted to be Jaws, or just creature monster movies that try to do what Jaws did. They're trying to do their own version, as opposed to these 2 movies I'm going to talk about that are clearly influenced and paying tribute to it in such a high regard. So Jaws releases in June 20th, 1975, and it's, Spielberg's 26. It's his first like really big movie. It becomes the beginning of the blockbuster movie era. And I don't mean the video store. It is the first summer blockbuster. And I really got to give it up to Rob Liefeld. And I assume this, like, he wasn't quoting anybody, but he said Jaws opened the door so that Star Wars and George Lucas could kick it down. And that's really what happens. It's special for the zeitgeist. It's special to me, and I already told you why, but I wasn't born in 75. I'm born in 79, so I didn't see this movie till the 80s. The reason why it was such a big deal, it was the first, not just the first blockbuster, but it's the first major marketed movie. They created a buzz purposefully on this release of this movie. Originally, it was going to be released on 600 or so screens, maybe like a little bit over 600, and they scaled it back to 400 to create a buzz, and holy shit, did that work. And you can go, if you only, I think it's like the 35th anniversary DVD, and then going forward from that, all the Blu-ray releases have the documentary, The Shark is Still Working.
The shark is not working. Repeat, the shark is not working.
Which is the most comprehensive documentary ever made about Jaws. And it talks about the early stages of how they just pulled this bold move to pull it back on the amount of screens that it was released on, and the movie just created a buzz. And obviously this is before any type of worldwide news source, in the way we know now. It's newspapers, it's magazines, it's news broadcasts. That's where the buzz was created. Lions, sold out shows, people going to see it multiple times. So that, becomes the first summer blockbuster, and it creates it's the first movie that I know of. When you go back a little further to Orson Welles' War of the Worlds creates this fucking panic because people thought this radio broadcast was real. Well, Jaws, and it's based on the Peter Benchley novel. He also wrote the first draft of the script. His script, this movie, creates a panic. People don't want to go back into the water. People are afraid of swimming. Benchley became an environmentalist after this, specifically working to spread the good word about sharks, because he felt bad that he created this kind of sentiment of sharks are evil. And that is obviously not true. They are animals. They are some of the oldest living animals in the world. Evolution has made them the pinnacle of the animal kingdom because they have no natural predator. Bastard humans are the only predators of sharks. You might make a case of killer whales, but they're not. That's more of like this thing that's become a little bit more known these days, where pods of killer whales can take out and do take out sharks. But what it did, it really created a real life panic and a real life opinion about sharks, which conservationists have worked for decades now to undo. And obviously, you can't blame Peter Benchley. You can't blame Steven Spielberg. It's a great movie. He made a Hitchcockian thriller about a shark and being on the water. And then, you throw in a couple of things like John Williams' classic score, 2 notes, that just gets embellished a little bit upon as it progresses. But it's the simplisticness of that really does it. And I could go on and on about all of the elements of why this movie is terrifying. But if you've seen Jaws, you know why it's terrifying. The classic, story about the shark not working well leads to 6.5 minutes of screen time for the shark. Less is more, which is a trope in cinema that really grew and grew. And some people do it well and some people didn't do it well. But that's kind of, you can look back to Jaws for that one. There's different aspects of both Nope and Godzilla Minus One that can say, okay, this is them looking at Jaws. And then there's aspects of the film that are completely unique to those films. Plot of Nope, plot of Godzilla Minus One, both have the basic plot of man versus monster, man versus nature, I should say, people versus nature. Nope, it's aliens. And then obviously Godzilla Minus One is Godzilla. And the shark, Bruce, is the main antagonist of Jaws. You might even say that the mayor could be an antagonist. But let's just look at the characters real quick. You got Martin Brody, Chief Brody, played by Roy Scheider. He's the everyman. He's the former New York City cop. He's concerned with safety. He's got some trauma in the fear of water, even though they just relocated to an island. Granted, Manhattan's an island, but not in the sense of where Amity is. But he represents the everyman, the outsider, but he is truly like that pure guy. He's a good husband. He's a good father, even though he seems a little distracted by everything. And that's Chief Brody. And we got Matt Hooper, played by Richard Dreyfuss. He's the scientist, the expert. He's privileged. He comes from a very wealthy background, but he cares. And he truly comes to Amity to help figure out this problem they're having with a killer shark. And then we've got Quint. That's right. Quint is played by Robert Shaw. He's the gruff one. He's the military vet. He's the expert. He's the fisherman, local, and very irritable. Now, the plot of Jaws, obviously people start getting killed. There's so much I could talk about this movie and that just talking about the plot. But, it opens up with Chrissy, the young teen who meets the dude, and they go for a skinny dip, and she dies a very horrible death. And apparently, that was all. She was doing those things. She was hyperventilating. She was trying to, drown herself, or at least, act like she's drowning. She does a great job. But it really sets the tone of the movie. That's how it opens. And I implore you, for some reason, if you haven't seen it, you gotta see it.
Nope. Nope.
Nope.
Nope. Jordan Peele's third movie. The characters throughout these 3 movies. So Nope, we've got the brother and sister team, OJ and Emerald. We'll call her M. Haywood. I see pieces of Brody in them. OJ is the everyman. Right? He's just kind of getting by, doing what he knows how to do, and doesn't concern himself really with trying to be anything else other than that. Where his sister, she's the spectacle chaser, but her character really does have pieces of everybody, even the mayor. Angel, who is the kid that works at Fry's, he's Hooper. He's young. He's technically savvy. He's an expert. He seems a little bit prissy, even though he's got his set of problems, but he's also the tech guy. He's the expert in that field. And just like Hooper was the expert in sharks, that's where you find that similarity right there. And then Antlers. He's the gruff cinematographer. He is Quint. He is Quint to a T, because they both end up, the fate of those 2 characters ends up exactly the same. They are doing what they are expertise in, and it's what gets them killed. Literally dying doing what they are supposed to be doing. Quint gets eaten by Jaws on his boat, and Antlers goes to film up close, try to get the alien on film with his camera that doesn't rely on electricity, and he fucking dies doing it. And he dies doing it. He doesn't stop. And Quint doesn't stop. He's stabbing the shark with the machete up until the point where the shark bites him in half. The other two that overlie on this Nope and Jaws character-wise, the mayor played by, I forget his name. And then Ricky in Nope, played by Steven Yeun, he's chasing the spectacle. He's ignoring the safety issues. He literally, he fills that little stadium arena thing at the circus up with people knowing that they're going to see the alien, and they all die. And he is chasing that spectacle, always trying to train the beast. Like he worked on that sitcom, The Chimpanzee Went Crazy. That's another overlying theme between kind of like these three movies. You can't tame the beast. And there's a line in Nope where like somebody says you can't tame a wild animal. You know, it's the same with sharks and obviously Godzilla. These creatures are not going to do what man wants them to do. Now, I want to talk about one of the craziest coincidental things about Nope and Jaws. Jaws, 4-letter title. Nope, 4-letter title. But even more so, the runtime of both of these movies, 2 hours and 10 minutes on the nose. I think that was done purposefully. Jordan Peele also does shoot things that the way technically in that Spielberg does, where he shoots in the day, but then they make it look like night. They shoot day to night. Both of those movies did that technique. And Jordan Peele definitely did that because he was influenced. You know, like that's one of his influences that he takes from Spielberg, without a doubt. We'll get into Godzilla -1 in just a moment, but a couple other things that like really stand out for me on Jaws that are a little bit, just surface homages. There's a scene in Jaws where these kids prank the swimmers with a cardboard fin and they get caught, almost die, almost get shot by the police. And in Nope, there's the scene where the kids, Steven Yeun's kids, prank OJ with the alien costumes and freak him the fuck out.
Nope. Nope. Fuck this shit.
So it's just like that's one of the things when I was watching the movie for the first time, I'm like, oh, that's super similar. That's right there. I'm just got to go back to this. The quote from the movie is, "Some animals ain't fit to be trained," which OJ's dad says to him, who dies in the first, 10 minutes of the movie, 5 minutes of the movie. So each of these movies starts off with a lot of death. -1 starts off with, 20-something soldiers getting trampled and eaten. Jaws starts off with Chrissy getting killed, and Nope starts off with the father dying. That sets the tone of the movie. These mysterious circumstances. You're questioning, like, how did this just happen, or what is this? You don't see the shark when Chrissy gets killed. In Godzilla, you see it's Godzilla. But Nope and Jaws have that similarity because you don't know how that nickel ends up literally going through his skull. All three of these movies have standout dinner table scenes. And I know that's a trope in a lot of movies, but Jaws has two. Jaws has the Hooper, Ellen Brody, and Martin Brody at the table, which is also like an extension of the scene with the kid, and they're doing like the mimicking. And then obviously the table where they start singing, "Show me the way to go home," and comparing scars. Nope has a scene at the dinner table with Antlers and M and OJ and Angel, and then all of a sudden Antlers busts out reciting the lyrics to Flying Purple People Eaters. That is a clear, like, hey, let's do this and let's throw a song in there. Now, there's no song in Godzilla -1, but there is that great scene where the four guys that are working on the boat have this conversation about the child that was abandoned, that the girl that Noriko found. They're all having this conversation about it, and it's just a very effective scene. It bonds the characters together. It gives us a look at the trauma that Shikishima has gone through, and he's still suffering. And when you look at Jaws and you look at them comparing their scars, and Quint goes into the story about the USS Indianapolis, it's the same thing. We're getting to hear Quint's trauma and why it inevitably kills him, because he basically can't ever defeat the shark. He can't get over the shark. The shark will always end him. So these dinner table scenes are extremely effective to kind of give us depth to the character. Like I said, it is a trope in movies, but these three movies all share, or these two other movies share, the love for Jaws. So going back to Nope, towards the end of the movie, the last act of the movie, there's great chase scenes. Pretty much it's just one like branching off chase scene with M and OJ and the alien and then the TMZ guy. But if you listen to the music on the score for Nope, and even going into Godzilla 1, when there's kind of like that cat and mouse game going on, it goes to an upbeat rhythm. And like if you listen to John Williams' score, whenever the shark's chasing them, whenever the barrels are going, swimming along, at the point where there's always movement, the music is upbeat. Once again, probably a trope. I'm not going to go into tropes, but it's just one of those similarities that you can't get away from. So at the end of Nope, and once again, this is full of spoilers. It's a cat and mouse game, and then the end of Jaws, the way it goes, right, we get Quint gets dispelled, he gets taken out. Hooper gets taken out, escapes from the cage. We don't know what happens to Hooper. So it's left with Brody on the sinking boat. He throws the oxygen tank into the mouth of the shark, gets out on the mast while it's sinking, takes a couple of shots, knows he's got to hit the impossible shot. Smile, you son of a bitch, hits the tank explodes, Jaws, boom, shark blows up. At the end of Nope, once again, it's a cat and mouse game. M uses the bike to get to the well because it takes those photos, those analog photos. The alien emits an EMP, it kills all the technology. First off, there's a huge homage to Akira. She does a bike slide just like the one in Akira. She releases a balloon filled with air and the alien engulfs it just to have it explode and destroy the alien. It is the exact same resolve to kill the alien that they did with the shark. Something with air, used it to go boom. And that right there, like, I remember seeing that in the theater. I was like, holy shit, that's how they killed the shark. Like, he is totally Jordan Peele is making his love letter to Jaws. Like, he was so affected by this movie that he structured major plot points and major devices in this movie to homage Jaws. You still have the same people left alive. If Brody is represented by the Haywoods, both M and OJ make it out alive, and Hooper lives. So Angel lives. He's severely fucked up. He gets tangled up in the barbed wire and he gets tossed around, but he lives. And so like, you can't get away from the similarities. And once again, it's not swiping. It's not stealing. This is an accomplished filmmaker, and it's Jordan Peele's third movie, 2 critically acclaimed movies under his belt, basically making his version of a monster movie that he always wanted to make. You can't do a shark movie because then he is going to be ripping off Jaws. So he turns it into something, but that's a movie about spectacle, about ignoring the fact that wild animals, and like I said, in this case, it's an alien, wild animals cannot be controlled. We need to respect nature. So that's Nope in a nutshell. So let's go on to -1. Now, -1, I think Nope, you have to look a little bit deeper. You really have to know some major pieces of Jaws and have them sitting in the back of your head at all times. -1 to me is a little more apparent, if not completely apparent. It's interesting. There's some stuff in there that takes a little thinking, like the fact that this is a movie that takes place post-World War II, just post-World War II in Japan. Whereas if you think about the linear fashion of this, Quint is on the Indianapolis. They deliver the bomb to be dropped. The bomb gets dropped, and like that's where, like the creation of Godzilla comes in right around then, when he becomes bigger, the Bikini Atoll, the atoll tests and all that stuff for the bomb. So we're talking about like parallel stories if we're going from the Quint timeline. We open with the Godzilla taking out these soldiers to survive, and it's 2 of the main characters is Tachibana and Shikishima. Koichi is his first name. The characters here, Shikishima represents Brody. Noda, who you will meet later, is the scientist. He represents Hooper. And Tachibana really represents Quint. The grizzled guy who is really good at his job, but he's got a chip on his shoulder. And so when Godzilla takes out all these soldiers, Tachibana blames Shikishima, and it's kind of like the mother of the Alex Kittner kid who gets killed, kind of blames Brody. So there's a little bit of similarity in that. But before Godzilla is introduced, the ocean is already marked as a dangerous place, right? We get the setting that there's all these mines that are still in the ocean from World War II, and that's the job that Shikishima takes to try to make ends meet. There's a lot of this movie that is not rooted in Jaws, and that's the World War II, the post-World War II sentiment, the trauma, the rebuilding. That's a setting, and that is a huge part of this movie. I even say to people, like, this is a World War II movie that just happens to have Godzilla in it, whereas Jaws takes place in an island, a summer town that relies on the business, but Jaws is the main character, or at least the main focal point. You can get through about 45 minutes of that movie without really thinking about Jaws, but then we get a little bit of foreshadowing, because when Shikishima takes this job to dispel the mines, to get rid of them, his job is to shoot them, and they explode. The foreshadowing is pretty heavy on this, because we know that the way that Jaws gets killed is by shooting something that explodes. So that's going to play a factor, and obviously it does. And there's a little shark mention when you see that first destroyer boat that is complete in wreck. The crew of the boat that Shikishima's on says, oh, maybe it's a shark. And then he says, no shark could be that big. I think that's actually a nod to, no, this isn't a shark. This isn't Jaws. But we're going to keep Jaws on the tip of your tongue. Small crew, small boat, similar to the Orca. The first sight of Godzilla, when the four characters are on the boat, that's the moment. That's your, oh, you're going to need a bigger boat moment. Because one of the characters says, you know, like, we need a bigger boat. He says it in a different way, but that's the same moment. Like, the beats of the story kind of start to follow Jaws once we introduce Godzilla in the ocean setting. So the first time they try to kill Godzilla is in this scene where they have two mines and they roll one out and they shoot it and it blows up, but it doesn't do anything. And then one of the characters, I forget which one, says, what if we get it in his mouth and shoot it? And they do that. But because he's made of nuclear energy and he's a nuclear creature, his head kind of explodes and then puts itself back together. Not only are we going to need a bigger boat, but we're going to need a different method to kill this creature. You might have heard Jaws mentioned a lot during the COVID years, because the mayor was basically like the unintentional mirror character for what Donald Trump actually did. Oh, nothing to see here. It'll be fine. It's just a shark. We'll catch it. Okay, we got this shark. It's fine. And everybody's like, no, it's not fine. People are still dying. Well, after the first Godzilla attack, the government keeps it under wraps to not telling the public so chaos doesn't break out. Now, that kind of seems like more real life than a killer shark, you know, killing people, because, like, if nobody knows about this giant kaiju, nobody knows, you know, like, nobody would believe it. But it could have prevented saving lives, and the Japanese government decided not to. It's that overlying theme. There's panic, and you don't want there to be panic in the public, so we're not going to tell people that they might get trampled to death by a nuclear 375-foot lizard, or however tall he is. So I talked about the dinner table scene, which is a really effective scene in this movie. We get a town meeting scene, which is very much inspired by the Jaws town meeting, where you first meet Quint, 3,000 to catch the shark, 5,000 or 7,000 to kill him and get the whole thing. There is a town meeting to kill Godzilla, which includes a nails on the chalkboard moment. Metaphorically, it's when Noda, the scientist, goes to talk in the microphone and it just like blares and everybody's like, ah. So you get the same type of scene, just a different version of these moments that are literally just a mirror image. And once again, this movie is its own thing, just like Nope is its own thing. But what I'm trying to point out here is that these movies were inspired heavily by Jaws, and it's a movie that you just don't see this happening, where Nope is its own beast. It made a fuck ton of money, and it was highly regarded, and obviously Godzilla Minus One was a huge hit everywhere, and it won an Oscar. And unfortunately, Spielberg didn't win an Oscar for Jaws. I do believe they did win a couple of technical Oscars. So these are wildly independently successful movies from each other, but they are these kind of like, one won't exist without Jaws. Neither of the two subsequent films would exist like they do without Jaws. So we get this town meeting scene. You finally realize that Noda is kind of this big deal. He's really kind of knows what he's doing, and he's Hooper, where science is his weapon, not brute force. So one of the huge pieces of this kind of connective tissue between -1 and Jaws, when Quint and Hooper are trying to kind of like slow Jaws down and track him, they use the barrels, these yellow barrels, very iconic. They become the 3 barrels because that's how many it took to try and get Jaws to not go under the boat. Wasn't successful, but it's an iconic part of the chase. It's an iconic part of the last act of the movie. And so with that, Noda's plan to sink Godzilla and try and like sink him, basically using the weight of the ocean to crush Godzilla, he wants to attach these Freon gas tanks to him and sink him. Those are the 3 barrels, although it's more than 3 Freon tanks. Like it's uncanny, the similarity between the two things when you watch it, and these boats are circling Godzilla and attaching these tanks to him. It's like, oh, there we go. There's your barrels. The similarity also in a lot of the scenes in the beginning in the ocean chasing the mine boat, he's got 35 those spiky things on his back, but they're dorsal fins. And that's the identifier. Like, that's how you know Jaws is coming. If the music starts playing and you see the dorsal fin. I'm not making this up, and I'm not defending myself on this. You watch these 3 movies with what I'm saying in mind, and you're going to see it. One of the overlying themes of these 3 movies is fear. We're showing you less. You're getting more and more terrified the more that this movie goes on, and you're still seeing less. The scene in -1 where Godzilla first makes landfall and basically destroys that entire portion of town is absolutely terrifying, because he's moving so slow and causing so much damage, and just people are getting destroyed.
あれはゴジラ。
And it just plays on that fear of like, this thing wasn't there, and then all of a sudden you can't get away from it. So there's a scene in Jaws where the shark's pulling the boat and kind of like twisting it around, and what eventually leads to the boat, half sinking. There's a grander version of that in Godzilla -1 where the boats are trying to pull Godzilla up, and you just get this epic scene of all these tugboats and the destroyers pulling. The way that Godzilla is finally killed is by exactly the same way that both of the other monsters are killed. The second time that they go for the mouth, it works. When Shikishima flies the fucking bomber plane directly into Godzilla's mouth, explodes his head, and boom, you've killed Godzilla. All 3 of these movies overcome their monsters by oral death, which is such an uncomfortable thing to say. It is a very uncomfortable thing to say. I want you to stop now and you just say oral death. It's terrible. And famously in Jaws, when the shark dies, one of the sounds that Spielberg put into the mix in the movie was the roaring of the truck in Duel, which was his made-for-TV movie, kind of basically is what got him the Jaws job. And when you watch Godzilla -1 and Godzilla Dies 2, you get a sinking shot with a lot of blood and smoke, and you get a roar. You can hear it. And so that's another one of those beautiful homages. That was the icing on top of the cake for me. It's almost shot for shot homage of Jaws sinking. You get one last kind of like menacing piece of Jaws when it's sinking, because the dorsal fin is the last thing you see. And then obviously at the end of Godzilla -1, you start to see him regenerate. So I always was under the assumption when I was a kid that Jaws might have had a little baby shark that floated away when it exploded. I know that's not real, but that was my way to justify the sequels. We don't need to talk about the sequels. There's themes of people versus nature in these 3 movies. There is the chase, the cat and mouse game that gets played by human and monster in all 3 of these movies. The characters all kind of, if you take Godzilla -1, like I said, Noda is Hooper, Tachibana is Quint, because he's like the grizzled, angry guy, but there's a little piece in some of the other crew that you can find in Quint. Now, but Chikshima is clearly Brody. OJ and M are pieces of Brody. Angel and Nope is Hooper. Antlers is Quint. And then Ricky and the mayor are the same. There's no real government in Nope that really shows up. But Ricky's abandon of safety and the fact that he won't think about how this is a wild animal, even though he was there when the chimpanzee destroyed the cast of that sitcom. And the mayor, he just won't listen to the experts and he won't listen to the evidence. And then with the Japanese government in Godzilla, they won't think about their people. They're worried about creating a panic post World War II, which obviously that government was in shambles. But still, they knew it was coming and they knew it was going to make landfall and they didn't say anything. There's so much else. And I know this might be a little confusing to some of you or some of you just not interested. But the reason why I wanted to do this, I don't watch too many film analyses, but I've had this conversation with a bunch of people. It's like, Jaws is such an iconic movie and it's such an important movie and it's such a great movie. It brought us Steven Spielberg. If the movie flopped, maybe we don't have Indiana Jones. Maybe we don't have E.T. Let's go further. Maybe we don't have Saving Private Ryan. Maybe we don't have Jurassic Park. The man's career he's the greatest director of all time, or at least has the greatest filmography of all time. He's a pioneer too in so many different techniques and so many different types of shots. Jaws is a beautifully shot movie that shouldn't have worked. And it's, like I said, I live and die by this movie. It's my favorite movie. I watch it every year around the 4th of July. We're in the very early stages of Jordan Peele's directing, writing career. It's 3 films. He comes from comedy, and comedy is the toughest. So he's able to make movies that transcend that because he's already got the toughest part out of the way. And his movies are super thoughtful. They are loaded with not just, homages and stuff like that, but they're loaded with details and layers of details. And like an onion, every time you watch it, you peel off another layer and you find something else. I don't know too much about the director of -1, but I will say this. I haven't had a movie I've enjoyed that much in a long time. And I saw -1 in the theaters 3 times, twice in color, once in black and white. And it's just so effective and it's so good. And you can't watch either Nope or -1 without really thinking about Jaws, if that's a movie that is, deeply ingrained in your mind. I wanted to do something a little bit out of my comfort zone, something a little bit of, that is not emotionally involved, something that is more just like, these are all the things, the facts. I don't think I missed anything that was too important, but Jaws is always, I've seen, I always kind of remember these little pieces of films that pay a little tribute to Jaws. If you watch Chasing Amy, there's a scene where Jason Lee and Joey Lauren Adams are comparing scars, and it is exactly shot for shot, just like the scene in the boat where Quint and Hooper are comparing scars, and then Brody looks down and he looks at his appendectomy and he can't really relate. And then there was that movie with Dana Carvey, Master of Disguise, where he did his impersonation of Quint and Jaws, and that was just so dead on. But those are just pieces of movies that pay tribute. These are 2 movies that are heavily inspired and, like I say, a love letter to what I call the greatest single movie of all time. And just the effect that Jaws has had on movies, and also the kind of, not even just pop culture in general, because like I said, there is a stigma that still sticks around on sharks. It is a lot less than what it was because we know a lot more about these beautiful creatures, but it's amazing that a movie could have done this. I hope this is enjoyable. That's all. We're back, baby. Season 2 has begun. I may try and do, 20 episodes every season, and that will be easier for me, for my schedule, and for my mental health. Before I get going, now that we're in season 2, I need your help to help grow this podcast, and there's a couple ways we can do that. We can do the reviews. So Spotify gives you a chance to star review. If you feel I'm worthy of it, please give me a review. My friends, on Apple, if you want, I'll take a page from Rob Liefeld. Post a review on Apple that has actual words. You could write a sentence or 2. I'll read it. I'll give you a shout out. That's how you get a shout out on this podcast. If you drop a comment on the YouTube channel, that's also going to work too. But please subscribe to this. Please review it and share it. if you find that this episode is really worthy, maybe find a film friend that wants to hear this, or find a group on Reddit that might want to hear this. Even if you tell people I'm an idiot, all press is good press. I've got a website now, westcoastdavengers.com. You can listen to this podcast on the website. You can click over to my YouTube channel from the website. I'm going to be setting up a store. You can read a little bit more about the Many Faces of Kirby, the zine. It's going to be my one stop for all things Davengers. Other than that, I will be doing my regular stuff on YouTube every 2 weeks. I got a sale. Every Sunday I drop a video. A couple of weekends I'll be dropping 2 videos as I see fit. And that's going to be it for the first episode of the 2nd season of Direct Edition.
Nope.
Nope.
Nope.